Hello everyone and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today I'm joined by my twisty, turny co-host Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about Twisters, the summer blockbuster event that actually I think might have been our most anticipated summer movie.
Combined,
collectively.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, and now we have sat down, we watched Twister in preparation, and now we have seen Twisters, but of course if you have seen Twisters or are going to see Twisters, if you have, will, have, whatever, a bunch of things.
Yeah, you gotcha.
Join our Discord, leave comments, subscribe to the channel, all these things. Tanner,
Mm-hmm.
Twisters is present.
It's
Twisters
here.
upon us.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about the movie?
Tucker, I really enjoyed this movie. I think this is a great time. There's a lot to enjoy about it. And when we're operating just in the midst of Twisters, when we're having a good time, I don't know if there's any other summer blockbuster that can match its level of fun. There are, like Furiosa, I would contend is a better movie than Twisters, but I don't think there is a more fun summer blockbuster this year than Twisters.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this summer's been pretty weak for summer blockbusters.
I'm not agree.
I'm not saying I'm not going to say there's a lot of competition.
Not stiff competition this year,
but it's certainly up there. I also really enjoyed this movie. I think that it feels so different being a modern disaster movie.
Yeah.
We actually just talked a couple weeks ago about Quiet Place Day 1, which also fits into the disaster movie genre a little bit. But this is much more overtly in that tradition, and it certainly makes it stand out, especially in a IP. Not like we've gotten disaster movies over the course of the last decade, but you're just like talking about like Geostorm and San Andreas and these sort of movies that like just completely gone to time. But Twister,
Moonstorm.
That's
Moonfall.
Moonfall, yeah. Moonstorm, Tanner. But Twisters with a couple of rising stars in it, in a franchise, but not really, because this film is barely, if at all, connected to the lineage.
It's a loose sequel. The only carryovers, and this isn't a spoiler, they have the Dorothy technology from the first film, and that's basically it. Like
they don't use it. I mean, they use it once.
They use it at the very beginning.
But I actually like that this is ostensibly a reboot for the series, and I think it pays off in introducing to us a new set of characters and developing their dynamics and their personalities over the course of the film. I do think the film starts off pretty shaky, and I would say that there's probably a solid 30 minutes of the movie at the beginning that I was not particularly sold on.
Okay, I get
but
that.
Once the characters' dynamics start get going, and we start learning a little bit more about their dimensions and histories, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sold on this.
It's a movie that really clicks into place at a certain point.
Absolutely. I leaned over you doing the movie, I'm like, Tanner, the movie feels like it's locking in.
It's locking in.
Yeah.
And that really happens when Glenn Powell shows up. Let's be honest, because that's when the puzzle is complete. There is, in that beginning chunk where he's not present is probably like 15, 20 minutes of this 2-hour film.
And there's an additional setting up to get to him section.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I really feel like once he rides in with his band of merry storm chasers, that's when we're like, all right, the puzzle of Twisters is complete. And now,
let's play with these pieces.
That's right. Director Lee Isaac Chung, who people might be familiar with from Minari from a couple years ago, can really play with the pieces, as you kind of saying, set up some really interesting dynamics, some really fun dynamics. And, Tucker, this plays into something that I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I feel Twisters better than the original Twister from 1996.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I actually found Twister to be a little bit underwhelming. I think potentially the story between Joe and Bill Hey, another movie we watched. Never mind. Okay.
No, don't worry about it.
The sort of marriage dynamic and the will they won't they thing I think is maybe a more interesting narrative.
Yeah.
But I felt that movie was very, very repetitive
in a way that the structure of Twister is the issue.
Yeah.
It's just, all right, we're gonna try the thing. Damn, it broke. Oh wait,
dang it!
There's a bigger tornado, and then
let's go storm chasing.
Dang
it!
It's that 4 times. That's the movie Twister. Yes. Anyway,
Twisters does not have that same issue.
Exactly. The relationship and the dynamic here is far more complex. I think Lee Isaac Chung sort of understood what the context of that first film and how to complicate it. There is not the typical like corporate versus down home good guys thing here.
There's a taste of it, but it's not present enough to feel like that's the core of the film. And I think that it is learning about Daisy Edgar Jones is our main character of this film, learning about her history and then watching her friendship with Glenn Powell's character Tyler Owens, watching that grow and evolve over the course of the film keeps it feeling very fresh because they ostensibly are rivals at the beginning and end up becoming unlikely friends.
They
by
become
the end.
cohorts,
Yes.
and perhaps something more.
Probably more. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there is more depth and complexity given to like the corporate bad guys in this, because Daisy Edgar Jones is one of them at the beginning.
Yeah.
This team, the Storm Par team that Anthony Ramos' character sort of recruits her into after a 5-year time jump from the opening scene.
Yeah.
In which, you know, some tragedies befall her and her friends, and she sort of like swears off storm chasing.
Let's go tornado chasing.
Yeah,
dang it, my friends died.
Yeah, exactly. She moves out to New York, the big city, and then she's got to go back to Oklahoma. It's like, I ruined this city girl. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She can't storm chase anymore, but she can.
She still can.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to talk a little bit about where I feel this movie is at its best.
Okay.
Which is when you are watching the dynamic between them change for specific reasons. I really enjoyed Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell, whether they are working together or at odds with each other, I think have great chemistry.
Absolutely.
And I think that it is in the moments where they realize something about each other, whether that is for good or for bad, that their performances are pushed to where they're giving their best work. I think specifically to when they're both using their storm predictory powers.
That's right, their gut instincts.
Yeah, and they are talking to each other in like sort of storm chasing lingo.
They have this really fun like dynamic towards the beginning where they're like trying to psych each other out, like say, well, this storm's going to do this for this reason, and then full well knowing that that's actually the one they want to go to, but they're trying to trick the other person to go to the bad storm.
Yeah. And then when they realize that they actually both have skills that the other person respects, and then when they realize that, oh, maybe you're not as bad as I thought you were.
Yeah,
like,
you got a little bit more like complexity to you. I didn't know you. My friend looked you up on the internet.
Yeah. And then there are some even more emotional moments later on where they're kind of bearing their hearts to one another, and these are the moments across the course of the film that really pulled me back in.
Right.
I do feel like the film loses a little bit of intrigue for me when we are focusing on just sort of the wider breadth of this movie. There's a lot of side characters that I think are pretty weak.
Similar to the first film, we get a sort of like storm chasing party.
Yeah, but now there's two. We have two.
But now there is two. Yeah. And I felt like they're solid. I don't think that there's just something about that 90s movie and the camaraderie that you kind of feel. I think it's also the presence of these character actors, and we have good actors amongst those parties. You know, Sasha Lane or David Corenswet, Anthony Ramos kind of fits into that. Brendan Perea, exactly, and the British guy, I forget what his name is. He's a really fun presence. He's like a British photojournalist following Tyler Owens and his storm chasing crew.
Yeah, and it's actually the dynamic between the tornado wranglers, as they call themselves, and Storm Par. That is what makes this movie interesting. Yeah, and learning about storm chasing culture through the lens of two very different approaches to it, and seeing the ways in which they are similar and which they are different. I think is what made this film so fun to watch. Yeah. Because they start off very different. They're kind of at odds. They're trying to one-up each other, trying to use their more straight-laced approach or their more wild approach to storm chasing to get ahead of one another. But then they come together.
They meet in the middle.
And it's that blending of the two personalities that ends up giving Twisters its energy, where you can hold it back, like, no, actually we should do a little research first, or go buck wild, and you realize maybe there's merits both.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it really sings and succeeds on the charisma of Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell. I feel, because
I think, unfortunately, it does not sing on the charisma of Anthony Ramos, who gets almost all of the worst lines in this movie.
He does. He gets sort of short shrift in a lot of areas. He gets the moment where he's like, well, you think that I don't care about people. What about you when you left our friends? And that's like it's sort of like try and force this third act split between him and Daisy Edgar Jones.
Doesn't really work.
In like the inciting incident to get them back in the field. He's kind of like, well, why do you think we're the ones who survived that tornado all those years ago? Buddy. It's like, man, you weren't in it. You were like sitting back in the van, like miles away. But anyway, the charisma of our 2-star performances here, Kentucky, you're right. These are two people that are really on the up and up in Hollywood right now. Yeah. And I think this is going to be a really nice notch in their collective belt.
Oh, absolutely.
Glenn Powell obviously getting a really solid runs of hits in here, where the biggest sort of rallying point people have for all those movies, whether it be Hitman or Anyone But You or now Twisters, is his
or Top Gun Maverick,
or Top Gun Maverick for instance, is his charisma and chemistry with his co-star.
Totally. Yeah, good point.
So I think we're really seeing a nice building sort of career for both of them here, and they're really good in this. And I think Lee Isaac Chung as a director really understands that we have to give time to this, as well as there's a lot of like just kind of like pause moments in Twisters.
I really appreciated that. Yeah.
There's moments, where I think this clip has been released online where Daisy Edgar Jones, the first time that she like tries to predict the storm again, she picks up the dandelion and lets the seeds like float in the air a little bit, and then Tyler Owens walks up and they have this moment. There's a lot more attention paid to like the psyche of these storm chasers and what they see in these storms.
Yeah.
Rather than like in the 90s movie, it was a lot more like pure adrenaline junkie. This shit is scary and they're just in it for the thrills.
Yeah. And
this one, they're like appreciating the beauty of it. And like there's this moment when like Daisy Edgar Jones looks out and she sees like the wind change in a wheat field. And I was like, damn, that's crazy. That's beautiful imagery. I think Lee Isaac Chung is really dialed into that.
Definitely. And I think that approach to this is why these people appreciate it, on top of the fact that they have this extensive scientific understanding. Both of them are very educated in meteorology. I think it's the balance of those two that makes me more quickly adjust to the mindset of these two characters. Whereas in Twister, I felt like there was a lot of times where they were just talking in storm lingo for like 5 straight minutes, and I was like, I mean, I believe them, I guess, but they use their storm lingo in kind of like a back and forth bantery way here that I think sells their dynamic a little bit more.
For sure.
And what also makes this movie work, Tanner, is these action sequences of tornadoes.
Oh, the tornadoes are a big part.
Yeah.
And here's what I'll say. I'll hedge it at the beginning because I did like them. But as I just said, I had that comparison point between the 90s film and then Twisters, and how Lee Isaac Chung is a lot more paying attention to the beauty inherent in these things. Like there's a lot more like sitting in the awe of what nature has created. Whereas in the 90s movie, I think that a strength that has over the new film now is the scope and the scariness of those storms.
They're more visceral.
They're more visceral. Jan de Bont and his creative team obviously put a lot of time and effort into making those storms appear darker, scarier. The sounds are like more not inhuman, but you know what I mean. They're not sounds that a storm actually makes. There's like tiger, lion growls and shit, and the jet engines and everything. Yeah. And it's all mounting in this way to make the storm like, oh shit, we're driving into something that could genuinely kill us right now. And that there's a more surreal or unrealistic cinematic hand taken there. Whereas in Twisters, the storms are more realistic. They aren't like as dark or as loud or as
this is a much quieter movie,
or as like crazy sounding in general. But I still find the action sequences good.
Yeah, they're good.
Because it's again trading in on like the characters here is really the important thing. I feel.
Yeah, and I think that the approach that they have, there's a lot of different plans that they're trying to execute. Makes going into these scenarios, not that they're going to die because a tornado is going at them, but their plan is going to be messed up because the tornado changes, or their abilities to predict what the storm was going to do didn't end up panning out.
Right.
And so it ends up becoming more of a personal stakes thing or a plan stakes thing, rather than, though there are moments of this is more than likely going to end my life. And I do think some of the moments where it is much more terrifying, and attacking the town at the end or attacking them when they're trying to hide in the pool, these are great sequences.
Right.
But I actually did find myself quite enjoying the moments where they're trying to execute on a plan.
Right.
And because of the unpredictability of the storm, or their flawed human nature that I would perfectly predict what storms are going to do. Those moments of tension I found to be nice. I think the film would have been a little bit more exciting or impactful if it had been clocked up to what Jan de Bont's 11 was.
Yeah,
because the film is quieter. Yeah. The storms are largely farther away. We spend a lot of time seeing them in the distance rather than being up close and personal, which is a different approach. But I did end up missing a little bit of the just like total like ear shaking.
Yeah, the total
totality.
the total sensory like overload that Jan de Bont loads into that 1996
This one
movie.
does not reach that.
If we had a meeting in the middle here of that like cinematic style of the storms, and then Lee Isaac Chung's understanding of pacing and differentiation and character work, if we met in the middle right there, I think that this would be like the perfect movie at that point. Twisters is yes. That's right. Twisters Dominion.
Sure. All right.
But
God, and they've come back.
And they come back.
Okay,
well, one of them comes back. R.I.P. Bill Paxton. But yeah, I think that there's just a lot to like in Twisters. Like I kind of open this up saying that there's just a lot of fun moments, and when it's operating at its very peak, there's not a summer blockbuster this year that I felt reaches those peaks of just fun summer blockbuster enjoyment. And I could name examples, but I think it's best experiences in the moment. Frankly, like a lot of it is.
Don't even listen to this review.
A lot of it is just the banter between Glenn Powell or Daisy Edgar Jones, or the banter between the people in the Storm Wrangler car between Glenn Powell and like this British guy who doesn't know what storms are.
Yeah, there's some fun moments.
There's really fun moments in there, and then Brandon Perea's character as Boone is this kind of like, he's the sidekick guy. He's like, I can't believe you abandoned me, Glenn Powell. He's like, well, what if we shot some rockets into a tornado? He's like, you said rockets?
Yeah, it's a little dog ears person.
Yeah. And yeah, there are really thrilling things. Like, thank you, Tucker, for reminding me of that pool scene where they try to ride out the storm, like in this the pump house of a pool, essentially. Sort of a callback to that the ending of that original film as well. I don't know if there's a whole lot else I need to say. I really, I didn't want to make this whole review comparing it to that original film, because I think it does a lot differently, and also think some things quite a bit better that made me just enjoy it and look back more fondly on it than, well, the storms in Jan de Bont's Twister were really cool, but it's a little bit repetitive. Yeah. This is not repetitive. They really give a lot of effort to change up every reason why they're going into a storm, changing up their strategy, changing up what exactly they're doing, or why they're going in, or who they're trying to save, or whatever. It's really good from that standpoint. Yeah. So, Tucker, I'm going to give Twisters a 8.4. All
right, I'll go a 7.6. I think this is a good movie. I think that this adds something, I think, a little bit more substantial and memorable and distinct to the 2024 cinematic landscape. As I was watching this film, I was like, man, big blockbuster movies this year haven't really been hitting.
They've not been clicking.
There's been a couple.
We liked Bad Boys.
Yeah.
We liked Furiosa.
I like Furiosa a lot.
You weren't on the Furiosa review.
I like that movie.
Yeah.
Dune
was not a summer blockbuster.
No, yeah. King of Planet of the Apes, I found a little underwhelming.
That was good.
But yeah, I do think that this is definitely in the upper echelon. Especially because it is an IP that hasn't been tread down. Like all these ones we're talking about, we're talking about the 4th, 5th, 6th entries of these series.
Yes.
But Twisters is a long forgotten series. It's also a genre, and also it's not treading on nostalgia.
No.
When we get a legacy sequel like this, which it is in time wise, but not in character wise.
That's right. You get Dorothy. You get Daisy Edgar Jones says, "I'm not back," like Bill Paxton says a lot of times the beginning of the movie.
It's not hammering home on nostalgia though. This is its own movie. It just happens to also be lightly connected.
That was the thing I liked about it, is that we're using the name recognition of that first film, but giving you stuff it's pretty different from the original as well. We're not doing the same dynamic. We're taking that dynamic and then interpreting it, modernizing it, and making it a little bit more complex. Which again, we said it with Quiet Place Day One. It's kind of like the ideal scenario. Exactly. Kind of like the ideal scenario of getting one of these indie director guys into your blockbuster is that they understand character.
Guys who made a 2021 indie movie.
Exactly. They understand character and pathos and all this stuff, and they will bring that to your movie. And also, hopefully, still having that fun spectacle along with it. And those are two films that do have that.
Yes. All right. Well, we've reviewed Twisters. We'll be back next week for Deadpool and Wolverine.
The big boy of the summer.
Whoo doggy.
Whoo doggy.
But thank you very much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
That was a good little pop and lock action you got going on here. I'm not talking. You can get too dizzy for the review.
Good, because tornado.
Twist.
Tornado go. Whew. Yeesh.
Not a lot of putting hands on colored dots in this movie, is there?
No, yeah, false advertising.
Exactly.
Also, no one refers to the tornadoes as twisters in this movie. They
That's
only say
true.
tornado. I don't think the word twister is uttered once.
But they do this.
That's the twister.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with those big wind things.
Twister. I hardly know her.
I hardly know her.
Yeah. Very good.
Twisters, I hardly know that multiple...
Hardly know them.
Yeah.
More progressive.